sit back, relax, and get ready to enjoy another awesome video by Capt Frank Lanier. Please subscribe, like, and share with all your friends and all the people you hate too.
Okay, so for today's find, we're looking at running lights on this mid-sized trolling. If you look right here, look at how much UV damage has occurred to this lens here. It is frosted to the point where it's basically, a 10 see-through. So the recommendation here, of course, would be to replace the lens so that it can be easier and clearer to view.
So for today's find, leaky packing glands or stuffing boxes. A look at the port and starboard shafts show these glands are leaking profusely. The only time they should leak is when you're underway and maybe, a few drops a minute. This is in a static position, meaning the boat's not underway. So these glands need to be either adjusted or possibly repacked to stop the leaking. For today's find, we're looking at the stainless steel props on a outdrive, and you can see here as we're turning and inspecting them, you see damage along the blade tips or leading edges here. This is due to galvanic corrosion. And we look at the rear prop, and you can see it has the same type of damage along the edges here, and also up around where the blade joins the hub. So this boat stays in the water a lot, and this is evidence that it has experienced the galvanic corrosion due to lack of proper cathodic protection. So for today's find, we're looking at a CO detector. We do a self-test check, nothing, not working. What's going on here? What's the problem? Well, we look up here at the fuse panel, and lo and behold, there's a fuse for the CO detector, but the fuse has been removed. Why is the fuse out of there? Well, the excuse I typically get is, that thing's defective, it keeps going off. Well, yeah, maybe it's going off because it's detecting CO. So the recommendation here is to reinstall the fuse and test the CO detector to see if it's operating properly. So for today, we're looking at sight tubes on a fuel tank for a large trawler. Things I like to look for: one, not only do you have a shutoff valve here, but you also have a shutoff valve at the bottom. You should have one at both the top and the bottom. And also you should have signs or placards here that remind you that the only time you should open these valves is when you are actively checking the fuel. So you open the valves, check the fuel, and then you shut the valves off. The reason for this is because the fuel sight gauge or the clear plastic hose that you're looking at there doesn't meet the burn time requirements for a fuel line. So you don't want this thing to rupture in the event of a fire or whatever. And then, of course, all the fuel would spill out of the tank. So that's why you shut both valves to eliminate that potential problem. Okay, so for today's find, we're looking at the house bank batteries on a larger power cat. So a couple of things with this installation. One, the batteries are chocked into place. You can see these bars here, they've got them, but the bar itself is kind of loose. I can wiggle it, so it's not going to hold these batteries. The other thing is these chocks do not prevent the battery from coming up this way. You got to have the battery secured so there's no more than 1 inch of movement in any direction. And finally, the positive terminals are not covered to prevent accidental shorting if you dropped a tool or something on them. So that will be the finds for today. Okay, so for today's find, we're looking at the shore power cord for a larger catamaran power cat. And the first thing we see here, we notice that the retaining ring is missing here. Now the purpose of the retaining ring is to lock it in place so that you don't have wiggling and movement, which can cause arcs and sparks, micro arcing and sparking, and eventually lead to a fire. So we'll pull this up, inspect it, and it looks pretty good. No charring or anything. This is where you look for charring to see if you have any issues there with potential fire hazards. So this is the recommendation is to replace this ring, this retaining ring, so it can be screwed onto the your inlet. Okay, so today we're checking the trim on a larger power cat, and we're going to come right here just to see how she sits. If you come right here, you can see that it's about 3 inches on this side, and we're going to come over here, and you can see the water line. This is what we're looking at right here, the water line here, the scum line, and it's at about right at 2 inches. Okay, so what that means is is this boat has a about a 1-inch list to port, and you can actually see it very well here if you see. And we're looking at the scum line here. There's the port side, and you can see over here, see the difference in here. It's about an inch difference right here. So for today's find, we're looking at a fuel filter for a sailboat, a mid-sized sailboat engine. And the thing I wanted to point out today is this bowl right here. What is this stainless steel bowl here? Why is it here? This bowl is called a flame impingement bowl. And the reason it is installed here is because the sight, you know, the globe, the bowl you have here on the bottom of your filter is plastic. This plastic does not meet the required burn times, you know, as the fuel hose does. So it would burn quicker or burn through quicker. So they put this flame impingement bowl, as most of the flames would be in the bilge coming up like this. And that's just to protect this plastic bowl and to extend the burn time on that. And that's the flame impingement bowl. Okay, so for today's find, we're looking at the fuel tank vent hose on an older sailboat. So we're gonna try to zoom in a little bit here and get a better shot of it. Right there is the hose right there. Let me position this round. And we're looking at it, and you can see right there's the year on it, and that is 1999. Which is a good year for prints, by the way. So, my math is always bad on the fly, and you guys always catch me on it, but I'm thinking that's probably, as it's 2024 now, that's going to be a 25-year-old piece of hose, and it is past its expected service life. There's no hard and fast rule for hoses, but probably about 10 years is the common, you know, point where they say, you know what, you should probably go ahead and start replacing the hoses if they're 10 years of age. So the recommendation for today would be to replace this 25-year-old vent hose. Okay, so for today, the find is something good. Here we have through-hole fittings below the waterline, nice bronze seacucks and stuff. The other thing that we have here that we like are these through-hole plugs. You see them on this one and the one up top up there too. So it's good to have appropriately sized plugs. It can be wooden plugs like this. It can be expansion style, newer ones. You always want those to be attached near every through-hole fitting below the waterline. An alternative practice to this is to have a damage control kit, which would have an assortment of through-hole plugs and fit, for each fitting. And also, if it's a wooden plug like this, maybe a hammer to drive it in place. So good practices, particularly with through-hole fittings below the waterline. So for today's find, something I'm sure I've mentioned previously, but it's important enough that I'm going to mention it again just in case. So if you look inside this hanging locker here, you see a fire extinguisher, which is good. You like to have a fire extinguisher in every sleeping compartment in the main cabin and so on. But the problem is that you have no little sign here. You want a sign or a placard somewhere around this hanging locker that says fire extinguisher inside or something along those lines. So today's recommendation is to put a placard outside of this hanging locker that says there's a fire extinguisher inside. So for today's find, we're inspecting a 3-bladed stainless steel prop on an outboard. Okay, we're just kind of looking along at the trailing and leading edges of the blades. You can see right here, we got a little nick right here. But what's even more concerning is when we look up here, you can see where the prop has been damaged and it's been beat back out into shape. So that would be an area of concern. Specifically, what caused the damage, and has the prop been checked to make sure it's properly balanced? So here's an interesting little trend that I've noticed on a lot of the newer European boats especially. This is a hatch here, a deck hatch, right? Typically you would have some type of latching mechanism to get this thing up. Well, how are you going to get this up, right? There's no mechanism or no latches, no anything, right? Well, that's what this little deal is for, right? Just a suction cup. All you got to do, pull it up and like that right there, and that accesses it. Yeah, is it convenient? I don't think it's as convenient as the deck hatch hardware, the pull rings and stuff, but it works. So for today's find, we're on a larger catamaran. This is a new catamaran, and we're looking at the emergency egress panel. They used to have hatches here, but the trend now is to use a solid panel of glass. The hatches, people would open them and they would leak, or they wouldn't open them if they needed to, to test them, and they wouldn't open them when they were supposed to. So now what they do is they put this panel in here, and you have a hammer right here. And you take this hammer, and if the catamaran capsized, you would take the hammer and break the panel. You just whack it right here, boom, boom, and that's how you would get out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if so, and you want to buy Captain Frank a cup of coffee, please click on the thanks button below this video. All tips received, not spent on coffee, will be used to improve my YouTube channel and create even more awesome videos.